We are going to take you down memory lane. Yeah.
Memory lane, a walk down memory lane. Let's take a trip through these wonderful years, through the good times, the bad times, the laughter and all those tears, and the friends that I'll never forget, all those crazy things that I'll never regret. No, I wouldn't change a thing. Those incredible moments that life always brings you. Join us, join the music, the great songs, the great stories, the people and places that may not be the same, but we share in their glories. Let's have some fun with the music. We'll be down that road, we'll just cruise it. We'll find a way, we won't lose it, and capture the fame down memory lane. Walk down memory lane. Oh, memory lane. Oh, walk down memory lane. Do-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba, memory lane. Oh, walk down memory lane. Let's take a trip through these wonderful years. All right.
Oh, you're
All
wonderful.
right.
Hey!
Yeah.
It's Tay mean, and there's no meaning. I bet you, is there anybody here whose name is Tay? See, I told you there's no meaning
We
to it.
hung him last week.
Okay, then, does that mean I'm next? I hope I'm next. Oh my God. Well, the biggest influence in my life musically was my grandfather. I grew up in Queens, 6 brothers, 3 sisters. Okay, so,
Just
I was
epidemic.
Catholic. What's that?
It was an epidemic.
Because they were Catholic. No,
You're Jewish.
I was Catholic.
He
Brilliant
was
Catholic.
Catholic. Oh, boy.
Catholic, but we always had a lot of fun at home. You know, we would sing while we worked. You know, what else are you going to do?
We
My
worked.
father was very
7
strict.
people and they worked.
That's
They
right.
worked.
We had to work at home. There's no, but what was interesting was when I was about 11 or 12, my grandfather, who was he loved music, but he would always tell me about the Roaring Twenties, and I never thought that I would be interested in the Roaring Twenties, and he would tell me about, and he also played piano. He was a really great piano player, or self-taught, and he liked to tip the bottle, so that's probably why I thought he was, very friendly. And it was a crazy time, or at least everything was changing. You could buy this car for $265.
Take a look at the car. You can
Yeah,
tell why we
that's right.
$265.
That's true. You have to make sure the car runs. You know?
Right.
No, because of the 20s. See ya. Stars of the 20s. Charles Lindbergh, as we know, he became one of the big stars of the 20s. And then there was commercial travel, as you know. So anyway, my grandfather was, very excited about the new changes that were coming about. There was radio. This was the big thing. Right? We used to gather around the campfire, he told me. Then we used to gather around the radio, so, on the piano, and then play melody with his right hand. So there'd be like this rhythm, and so he would be able to set this rhythmic thing. It was kind of a new way of playing. Ain't Misbehavin' was one of them, which we're going to play. But this tune here was about pretty much he was telling his girlfriend, I'm not misbehaving, I'm a good boy, so you can count on me. And then of course he wrote another song. Him and Andy Rissoff wrote a song called Honeysuckle Rose. Now that was not a plant. That was the name he gave to another one of his probably girlfriends.
No one to talk to all by myself. No one to walk with. I'm happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving. I'm saving my love for you.
Nobody was around, just my grandparents and George Gershwin. So what happened was Alfred wanted to really impress my grandmother, Eleanor, and take her to a fancy Broadway show. So he was lucky because right at the time he wanted to take her in 1930, a show came out, see here's 1930, and it had two famous stars. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ethel Merman.
Yes.
And Ginger Rogers were both in the same play.
And big plays.
Yes.
Big plays.
And the name of the play was Girl Crazy. And so what my grandfather Alfred did is he went and got tickets to this play, Girl Crazy, and he took my grandmother, Eleanor. Now she thought this play was so great because Ethel Merman, she was such a good singer. I don't know if you know this already, but Ethel Merman used to be a stenographer. Do you remember secretaries and they would take down the speed writing?
Long writing.
Yeah, so Ethel Merman was one of the best in the business. Over here in White Plains, did you know she lived in White Plains? So it turns out, right before this play came out, lucky for Ethel Merman, lucky for us, lucky for George Gershwin, she switched and stopped doing stenography, stopped being a secretary, and she went and started singing. Now everyone probably remembers vaudeville, so she was a vaudeville singer in White Plains, right over here. So what happened was,
You're in White Plains right now.
pretty close.
That's the fire headquarters.
I could throw a stone and we'd be in White Plains.
Right.
That's right. So what happened is, Ginger Rogers was already in the play Girl Crazy. She had gotten hired. They hadn't opened yet. And she said, let me go see Ethel Merman. I don't know anything about her. I'm going to go to her vaudeville show. And Ginger Rogers was in the audience of Ethel Merman in the vaudeville show. And she was swept away. I mean, if you've heard Ethel Merman sing, she's amazing. So then what she did is she went back to George Gershwin and said, you have to have her in our play, in Girl Crazy. That's the name of the play. So he said, I don't know Ethel Merman. She's 22 years old. She was a secretary. I don't know how she sings. So what he did is he had Ethel Merman come down to his fancy penthouse on Riverside Drive in Manhattan, very fancy, and had her sing for him. And when he heard her singing, was oh my God, Ginger Rogers was right. This woman can sing. They even call it belting, you know, that she sang so great. So he hired her for the other star, because we have here, Ethel Merman's here on the top, and then Ginger Rogers. They were both in the play, and the name of the play was Girl Crazy. And so what happened was, George Gershwin said to Ethel Merman, please don't ever take a singing lesson. If you take a singing lesson and change your voice even a little bit, it won't be as perfect as it is right now. Leave it alone. And Ethel Merman sang her whole life, and she never used a microphone. That's how strong her voice was, even when she got older and stuff. So it's really good.
When she sang alone, she sounded like a horse.
You could hear her in the back of the, way in the back.
Really,
yeah.
But she drew the crowd.
She sure did. She was very popular.
She was very
And she was an acquired taste.
And you know, I was a volunteer fireman for many, many years in White Plains.
Oh, okay.
And when we went to a house that was really old, and you went in the cellar to clean it out after a fire, you found records.
Oh, yeah.
By Ethel Merman.
Yeah.
And this other tomato.
Yeah, Ginger Rogers,
They had the world by the balls.
Right, by the string. We've got the world on a string, 8 years old. And my mother had 4 girls already. She decided not to have boys. Boys were too loud.
It's very obvious.
What do you mean boys were too loud?
Boys didn't wear dresses. She wanted girls, so my mother had 4 girls. 1992, so we're right close to where we are now. It's about 10, is that 10, 20 years ago? I don't even know the math. 20 years, wow, 20 years ago.
20 years. Time flies.
So what happened was, my grandparents, who were 80, took my mother and the 4 of us girls to the remake on Broadway of Girl Crazy, but what was it called now? Crazy for You. So they just switched the words around a little bit, you know, and so we all went to see Crazy for You. And what we liked the most was there were some cowboys in the play, and they had kind of crazy names like Monk, and I don't know what the other names were, but we really liked those cowboys because we were little girls and we liked to hear them and stuff. So it was fine. So here You see, 1992, that's later, that's called Crazy for You, and that's a little different. The only one I want to remind you of is we're going to play I Got Rhythm right now. I Got Rhythm, they use some of these songs in different movies. One of the most famous versions was Gene Kelly. Now you probably know American in Paris, and you probably know Gene Kelly's Dancing. But what you probably forgot is that they played I Got Rhythm because remember the little kids were all sitting around and he was trying to teach them English. And so what he said is if you say I got, then he would say rhythm. And they would say I got, and then he would say music. And that's how he was teaching them English. He was teaching them how to say I got, and then they would add in the other words to the song and stuff. So we're going to play that song for you right now.
I got rhythm, oh yeah, I got music, I got my girl, who could ask for anything more? I got
Rhythm!
I got
Music!
I got my
girl who could ask for anything more.
I got
Starlight, I got sweet dreams. I got my girl who could ask for anything more. Who could ask for anything more? Very nice. I heard some of you singing along with us.
All
That was
right.
great.
We're getting into a party mode here.
Yes, we are. So the next song we're going to do is a song written by Cole Porter. And in 1930, Cole was writing songs, and he wrote a lot of songs that kind of expressed how people really felt about their inner feelings and love and those kind of things. And now Cole Porter was a really rich guy, and he married somebody who was even richer. So they used to travel all over the world. And during one of their trips, it was a 2-month excursion down the Nile River, if you can imagine what that was like in 1930. Pretty exotic, I imagine. He heard an Islamic chant, and that inspired him to write the song, which is Night and Day. He wrote this song, Night and Day, for a movie that came out in 1932 called The Gay Divorcee. Now that movie really raised eyebrows because the leading lady and the leading man, who I'll tell you who that was in a minute, they were going to hook up together because she was already going to leave her no-good-nick husband. So it was a little bit risque for the era, you know, to deal with divorce in this way. So that was really interesting. He wrote this song for the leading man, who was Fred Astaire.
Wow.
Now, Fred Astaire, when he was a little boy, he got on the stage in vaudeville, and he was actually in a movie called Dancing Lady with Clark Gable and Joan Crawford. And then he went on to do a few other things. But when this song and this movie, this play, came along, he was the leading man, and it was a big breakthrough for him. And this established him as being a leading man, as having a great voice, and he could sing his own songs, and as being a major dance guy, which we all know and love him as, right? The foxtrot, all these dances, he was known. He kind of danced his way through the American imagination. Well, there's somebody else that was in this movie with him. Does anybody have any idea who might have been in that movie with him? Dancing? I think we talked about her a few minutes ago. Ginger Rogers! Ginger Rogers! And so in this movie, the two of them became established as the dancing couple.
Can you mention, and you go along, because this is all opening up a lot to myself.
Wonderful.
This is also when radio is beginning to
Okay.
break open.
Okay.
Yeah.
These people are getting a popularity on music,
Yes, yes.
on the radio.
In fact, Fred Astaire brought more standards into the American songbook than even Frank Sinatra. So, but Ella Fitzgerald, a lot of people recorded this song. But back to Fred and Ginger. Do you remember what they looked like when they danced? You know, there's a great story. Well, during that era, do you remember how the movies, everybody was rich and they wore these big fur coats and, so that was kind of the hats. And that was actually when the Depression was beginning and Prohibition was ending. So, yes, and one of the movies they started was Top Hat. So they went on to do 10 movies together. Top Hat, Swing Time, Follow the Fleet. Do you remember any of those movies? So if you can think of Fred and Ginger in your imagination right now, maybe you want to move your feet and do a little dancing in your imagination. Huh? Does anybody here like to dance? Did you used to dance when you were younger? Yeah, I bet you did. I love to dance. So maybe while we're doing this song, you might want to either tap your feet or in your imagination. Imagine Fred and Ginger and you dancing, or you dancing with Fred. How about that? Or dancing with Ginger, right? All right, so I hope you enjoy the song.
I may get up and dance myself.
Yeah,
Only you beneath the moon and under the sun. Whether near to me or far, it's no matter, darling, wherever you are. I think of you night and day, night and day. Why is it so that this longing for you follows wherever I go?
in the roaring traffic's boom, in the silence of my lonely room, I think of you night and day. Tap your toes. Clap your hands.
Spend my whole life making love to you day and night, night and day, day and night, night and day, day and night, night and day, day and night, night and day.
Nice singing. Good job.
All right.
And things like third dimension. Yet we grow a little weary of Mr. Einstein's theory. So we must get down to earth, at times relax, relieve the tension. No matter what the progress, or what may yet be proved, the simple facts of life are such they cannot be removed.
You must remember this. A kiss is just a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply. As time goes by,